Hello, welcome along to the home ground where we look at the unique connection between sport, business, property, local council, and all these different variations of the theme. Guess what? Max Schiffman's in Queensland. I reckon he might be doing reconnaissance on the 2032 Olympic Games. Max, where are you and what can you report?
Well, I'm in lovely Burleigh Heads today, but I've been on the road all day. Started off in Brisbane and did get to drive past some of the locations for the new infrastructure, particularly some of the stadiums, though there's not much of a stadium there. They've got 7 years to get it done or just under. But it's amazing to see how much activity there is up here. There's just so much excitement. You can see things are building towards something big in 2032.
Absolutely. And Max, we've had the pleasure of speaking to so many different and varied individuals in the world of sport and business. And today we've got David Cvetkovski, who's the president of Preston Lions. They've got a unique story in Australian football, a foundation club member of the Australian Championship, former NSL giant. David, welcome along.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Max, for having me.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about Preston. Not so long ago, you were in the third tier of Victorian football, and you basically had to reinvent the club. Tell me about the way that was done and the connection between the club, its fans, and the community.
Yeah, when we look at the journey, the various teams, we've been able to keep a consistent team of stakeholders at board level, at advisory level within the club. What's been pivotal to the success and the rise or the renaissance of our club has been being able to stick to a strategy or a plan. No different to any business environment I've operated in, where as a leadership team, we set out to create a business plan. And our first one goes right back to the mid, 2016, 17, where we created what was a 2020 plan. And we were still in State League One back then, but commercially, we set out the key pillars that any business needs to focus on. Being at the commercial, the sponsorship, your merchandising, your game day experience elements, infrastructure. And we just stuck true to, first of all, that plan. We then went to a 2025 plan in 2019. The 2025 plan was delivered in 2023.
Okay.
And we're under pressure now because the 2030 plan, we're 2025. And hopefully, we have a plan and everyone aligns to the plan. And then behind a plan, you can build your capability, and your capability comes from your people. Without good people in business or the football business, there's no success. And we've been very fortunate at let's call it board or advisor level. So we have a board, and then I tap into probably something in the tune of 25 to 30 male and female advisors from different walks of life who step in on major strategic projects to deliver them.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've really struck a theme that we've heard from the really successful clubs and the people we've interviewed from them, which is about having that strategy, that plan, really being commercial, and that business component is so important. Where there's such a stark difference between the clubs that run professionally as a business actually has to pay for itself and make money and deliver something for the fans versus those that don't. But obviously, you're now in the Australian Championship and you've been preparing this for a long time, as you said. So what does it mean to you, the club, and the whole community around you?
Yeah, it's for us, we continue to elevate the brand and the product. Ultimately, we're in the entertainment business, and the more entertainment we can provide for our supporters and for our commercial partners, the better the outcome. So we've been involved. Our first meetings would have been 2017-18 with the AFC around the entire concept of what was a second division. And we've stuck true to the concept. Why? Because football, whether we're in it or we're not in it, because when we came up with the concept, we're still in State One, needs an aspirational pathway. We can't continue to hit the glass ceiling because, as we've seen, and I'll use Victoria as an example, for the last 20 years, these poor clubs have been playing to win the local Victorian title, and you win it, you can win it every year. And what happens after that? You get a $20,000 check and you have to rebuild again. So I think we need to break through. I think this is the first phase of aspiration to put us on this platform where the whole Australian ecosystem can participate. We've been very fortunate that we're on the SBS platform in terms of promotion of the game first year. And from that, like any good business, we'll get data. And I think the data will tell a very good story of where we go second year, third year. And maybe that data will help us with our case for promotion and relegation, ultimately.
And David, your club model is a little bit different to some, whereby there's a major sponsor or a benefactor for some of the bigger clubs that basically funds a lot of the operational costs. Tell us a little bit about the way you spread the load. Was it by choice? Because you have a lot of different corporate sponsors and a very unique relationship with the City of Darebin Council.
Yeah, that was our strategic call. We don't rely on any one benefactor to pay for the club or ultimately pay the bills when the club's in trouble. We've spread the load across 140 key stakeholders. We've engaged our entire community, be it local or our Macedonian community, which is the background we come from. So we've spread the load and we've spread the risk. Some of the other models out there, and I see Marconi as a super club. Marconi is a business. Marconi has everything from restaurants, bars, poker machines, reception centres. They are probably the benchmark of Australian football when you look at a footballing model. But most clubs, be it at NPL level, are either spreading the load amongst their local community from a partnership perspective, or, as I call it, the whale model, where they've got one or two people that might pay the bills. But the question mark on that is, how long can these people pay these bills? And what happens, as we've seen, when these people either decide to leave or not pay the money that's required.
Yeah, look, that's something that we've seen in other walks of life. Obviously, some challenges in the A-League with Western, and they're not the first. There's been many cases where A-League clubs have failed to be able to continue trading because their one benefactor has disappeared and had some challenges, things like that. So certainly not an uncommon story. And what you're talking about here is very, I suppose, similar to what we heard from Ross Pelligra with some of the stuff he's doing as well around Perth Glory, but also some of the other codes and clubs that he's involved in, and trying to build that infrastructure and that amenity around the club itself. So you're obviously doing it in a particular way. How do you think the way you guys are going about it, Preston, is going to set the scene for other clubs? What can they learn from what you're doing really well?
It's not a perfect world. And we're blessed that most clubs actually talk to each other. Most clubs have the same pains, and the more we talk, the more we actually learn from each other. So our key stakeholders, be it your councils, your governments, we're relying on them in many cases for funding. We've got our then commercial partners that we're relying on. But what we've constantly got to look for is how can we advance our club and stick to our plan over the next 3 to 5 years. Now, football in itself, when you look at the game, and we look at senior men or women's football, is a costly business. It's actually a costly business. And would I go in the business of football? I probably wouldn't go in the business of football if it wasn't for the passion and my heart beating Preston. And there's probably another element, which it's a dirty word, old Skyhook song, ego. We want to achieve. We like success as a club, as a community. Everyone wants success. I don't see too many people following clubs that lose every game every year, but you start delivering success, and the ego element starts to come into it. That's a reality. So if Preston was just a business, it'd probably be the last place I'd invest. But there's this massive heartbeat, and when you hear last Friday, 5,300 men, women, children, grandfathers walking in with their grandchildren, singing and chanting and eating. It's a special place, and we've tapped into that community feel, and with it, built the business around the key pillars of merchandise. Our merchandise sales. You walk in, the first thing you'll do is you'll see the Preston merchandise shop. you'll probably see everyone wearing, I think 80% will be wearing Preston gear. And a lot of that we manufacture ourselves. So all the t-shirt and hoodie ranges, we do have a commercial partnership with Umbro on the professional side. However, all the t-shirts and hoodies, we have our own team, thanks to Tony and Dan. We press our own stuff. We buy and press our own stuff. We have our own presses. You start then looking at the food. Most Friday nights, we'd have 30 to 40 of the junior parents cooking and serving. And they're all paid staff, but there's a commercial model to us. Friday maybe selling close to 2,000 kebapi rolls. And with a kebapi roll, you can't just leave a roll. You got to buy probably a Southern or a gin and or a Canadian Club with it. So if we're getting our average spend up to $25 to $30, plus then there's the entry ticket. And for the very first time with the Australian Championship, children are paying $5. So up to 13. Up until now, we've in the NPL had to let every child in for free. And most children at 13 are still saying that they're 16 to get in for free.
Yeah.
Whereas now a little $5 goes a long way.
And David, what about the BT Connor Reserve or Janice Steele Stadium?
Yep.
You know, it's a uniquely suburban stadium with a very intimate atmosphere. But what can you do? Have you got plans to increase the footprint? Can you do it with the City of Darebin Council? What do you need as a club project for the next 5 years to where you want to be?
Yeah, and that's a part of our infrastructure plan. Over the next 5 years, the next month, for the very first time, we will fully asphalt, self-funded, the entire perimeter of the ground. So up until now, we've had like a crushed rock base, so it gets dusty and you get a special seasoning in your roll. And if it gets wet, you'll know about it. So and this is all a part of improving the experience. Friday night, we were running about 35% female attendance. You know, we don't want people walking in through potholes and water baths. So how can we get the asphalt in? Thanks to the City of Darebin, we've got the pavilion, the grandstands looking fantastic. We have plans, and we had announced plans for a 2,500 seat ability on the opposite side of the ground. So let's hypothetically, we say 2,500, 5,000 sitting. And then, you know, you could have another 1,000, 2,000 comfortably standing for the big games, as we saw against South earlier this year with 9,000. It becomes a boutique stadium. Now, the comparison would be us having to go and open up let's call it an AAMI stadium or another major stadium. And before we've opened the gates, we're potentially looking at $70,000 to $80,000 in fees. And we just can't afford that. And I don't think many clubs can.
No.
So why wouldn't we, you know, I still say the best probably ground in Australia is Adelaide, Hindmarsh. 15,000, David?
Yeah, it's about 17 to 18 at its capacity, but it's brilliant because you're right on top of the action. It's intimate. It's exactly what football fans want. And I think you get that same type of vibe at BT.
Yeah.
But, you know, you talked about the footprint, and I know Max wants to talk about the infrastructure. Is there any more you can do other than the asphalt to improve the facilities around?
We've got 4 major size grounds and 2 mini roos grounds. And thanks to the federal government and the Minister, Jed County, we have a brand new synthetic ground going in on ground 4. So we might be one of the only clubs in Victoria with 4 grounds and 2 mini roos grounds. Let's call it a major stadium where we have the capacity, you know, to fit in 9,000 people, and then a synthetic ground, because I think our Melbourne winters are pretty harsh. The grounds do bog up. It doesn't matter what you do. We re-sow twice a year and they still bog up. So the capability, I think the New South Wales-based clubs are maybe 5 to 7 years ahead of us.
They've got 7 in the New South Wales Premier League. They've got synthetic surfaces.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that then further supports the business model and the football model of our children playing 42 to 44 weeks a year. And the footballing gurus are saying 20, 24-week seasons are not enough. The old days are then getting the cricket back. Well, if we want to produce footballers, and our aim now in the next 5 years is to hopefully have a pipeline where 5 to 10% of our women and men's team are coming from our junior ranks. We need to be providing a footballing product from a commercial aspect where maybe the kids are out there for 40 to 44 weeks a year. Because as we know in Australia at the moment, the parents are more than happy. In Victoria, probably average at the moment $3,500 per kid for a full program. So there is some margin in that.
Yeah. So it sounds like from what you were saying that you're a big proponent of the more boutique style stadium than the AAMI stadium, which makes sense, particularly I think at a championship level. One of the things that we've grappled with is whether there's a room for privately funded stadiums around the country. Obviously, again, not to pick on Western, but we've seen what's happened there. They had the right vision, but weren't able to achieve it currently. And you talked about the fact that a lot of what you were doing relies on either the council or the federal government or some sort of grants. Do you see a pathway for more and more clubs to start building their own private infrastructure in a way that then lets them be commercially independent?
There's definitely a market for it. And I've been a big proponent for the final series in Victoria. And I think this has been a good year where Football Victoria announced the final will be played at, let's call it Lakeside, to not confuse anyone. Let's not call it South Melbourne's ground, because then when South Melbourne's in the finals, every other club's up in uproar because we're considering giving South Melbourne a home ground advantage. However, the reality from a football perspective, if we make a long-term commitment and say, hey, be it Lakeside or any other facility, it's a great boutique facility, as we saw with the final this year, where we just lock it away and say the finals are being played there, because at 10,000 people, it was an incredible audience and an incredible experience for the final. So there is scope. However, if you're looking at the average crowd attendance, bar potentially, Preston, it'd be great to create rivalry. And I think there's some maturity in the relationships of the clubs now where they're realizing, and I'll refer to the old Kevin Sheedy model. Kevin Sheedy used to create rivalry with every club. He pulled a scarf out and started waving it around with West Coast. He created a rivalry with West Coast. So why is that important to me? I want to be friends and rivals with every club. Why? Because I want 2,000 of their supporters to come and give me their $27, $30 per game. Get your calculators out. Welcome South, welcome Heidelberg, welcome Hume, welcome Avondale. Come down to our boutique stadium that is run off a very low cost base to help our kids program grow. But how can we then in return? This year, I call the phenomenon the Preston effect. MPL's pretty exciting this year. Most grounds are full when Preston goes there. And I say to the opposition, treat them well, give them a meal, they'll pay their ticket, get their $30 back in return, but give them a good experience. And this is a vibrant footballing ecosystem built on good rivalry and friendship.
Okay, about the ecosystem, because, the cynics would say the championship is ticking a box for the traditional clubs plus the MPL winners of each state to participate in a national competition, but there's no real motivation for promotion relegation in a two-tiered system. What would you say to that? And do you think there's going to be growing pains with this competition? And if there is a pro-rel system, how far is it away?
It's interesting, David, because if you look at the journey, I think it was in 2023 when we were announced as foundation clubs. We were announced as foundation clubs by FA on the back of a home and away model as a pure second division. The biggest question mark was pro-rel. Now, I think we need to get our house in order. We need to get the data, and we need some maturity within our football clubs over a period of 2 to 3 years to see from this type of tournament, the data and the clubs themselves will elevate. We'll see some common themes in potentially clubs that can elevate their propositions. Why? Because, now I'll ask you a question. Has the A-League come back to the MPL?
Well, I think the A-League, I think both competitions can learn from each other, to be honest. And when, say, Sydney FC play at Leichhardt or a smaller stadium, it is a better atmosphere. Correct. No doubt about that.
But take out the biggest A-League teams, take out the top 6. How many are playing? 12. So the bottom 6, I'd play against the bottom 6 any day of the week as Preston with 6,000, 7,000. My commercial model will start to be bespoke and fit for purpose. Can I compete with the big end of town? No. They're different funding models at the moment. Give us 3 to 5 years to continue to build a strong membership base of 3,000 to 4,000 members. Merchandising, sponsorship. The gap might not be as far away as it was 5 years ago. Now, this is without any major commercial, media, or sponsorship deals, to my understanding at the moment.
Yeah.
Give me 2.5 million.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, you're sort of seeing the two leagues converge. I mean, if anything, A-League attendance has dropped off as, you've got all this excitement in the championship, and some of Preston's crowds would be bigger than what you're getting in some A-League games. So I think that's a reality too. So I wonder how long that distinction is gonna last.
I think the gap is closing, but the challenge is on us. The challenge is on us clubs to keep elevating and delivering a polished product. And we've still, warts and all, we've still got some steps to put in place to get there. It's not a perfect world for us, but then again, it's not a perfect world, full stop.
Well, I think that's an honest appraisal, David. And I think a lot of the clubs would say, no, we need a pro rel straight away. But the calmer heads would say, let's take a breath. Let's absorb what's happened for the championship. It's been a really good first step. It's engaged communities. It's given traditional clubs the ability to be proud of their history and have a forward lean, which is really important. So, I'm not sure what you think, Max. I honestly think that there should be some absorption of what's happened in the first championship and then a plan moving ahead.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you need it to mature and sort of, figure out the kinks and figure out where everyone sits. But over time, I could certainly see there being a very strong case for bringing back promotion and relegation. Absolutely, especially as you have the more professional clubs that are really operating, at a very high level.
Let's just break down the championship clubs down to another layer. You've got your long-term NPL stalwarts being, your Marconis, your Arpias, your Sydney Croatia in Croatia. Hope I haven't missed anyone in Melbourne. You look at your Souths, your Heidelbergs, your Avondales. Don't forget Preston was playing VPL football last year. It's only our first year in NPL, and then we've had to play NPL for the first year and survive, and then play in an Australian Championship. We need some maturity. Now look at the other entrants who are the champions from every state that have come in, and they probably need some maturity. How many of these champions might we see next year? I dare say we might see them winning it again, 60, 70%, because they've probably been able to strengthen their proposition by now playing the Australian Championship.
Yeah. So from two points of view, from the commercial model and the footballing side, they get to test each other and against all the different states and NPL sides. David, it's been a fascinating chat. Thanks for your time. And
thank you.
We've seen so many different perspectives in the world of football, but sport and business and councils and the whole community feel. Thanks for your perspective.
Thank you, guys. Take care.